cool cats and kittens. Today we're talking about debt jubilees. So why is that? Over the weekend, Pope Francis came out and very bravely suggested that the leading powers of the world should consider forgiving the debt of the developed world and seriously considering a universal basic income for all of the world's inhabitants. I'm going to talk about universal basic income in future videos, but today I want to talk about debt jubilees because, as many of you are probably aware, this is something it's been a topic of discussion for generations, and it's incredible that this conversation has been suddenly accelerated due to this coronavirus. So the idea is that this group of finance ministers and central bankers are actually going to be meeting on Wednesday this week, so the 15th of April 2020, to discuss the topic of freezing sovereign debt payments for these 69 developing countries for anything from 3, 6, 9, 12 months or even more. It's rumoured that there are going to be discussions around whether it could be a full relief of their debts or simple deferments or debt restructurings. It's very unlikely that they'll be fully relieving any of these debts immediately. But just discussing debt holidays is an incredible move on their part. This is largely because in the early days of the virus, the predictions for growth slowdown in Q2 2020 were around 10 to 15% for the most part, but actually in the past few days those predictions have been increased dramatically. So now most people expect the global economy to dip by anything from 25 up to 50% in Q2 compared to last year. So that insane slowdown in the global economy is leading people to be a lot more adventurous with some of the policies that they're exploring. For me, what gets really interesting is that, well, if we're discussing relieving the debt of the 69 poorest countries in the world, then what about the leading countries of the world that are also insanely over-leveraged and indebted? And I guess the question is a global debt jubilee really possible? Now, obviously, this isn't something that is going to be pursued immediately, but I do think it's going to be something that is going to become increasingly serious in the conversation that people are having. We know that in the Western world, and probably the entire world, that individuals are more indebted than they've ever been. Everybody is up to the hilt with student loans and credit cards and mortgages and personal loans. And the nation states are really reflective of that. The national governments are more indebted than ever. National debts have been exploding even before the crisis happened. In 2007, the average ratio of government GDP to debt in the G7 economies was 81%. By 2019, so that's before the crisis, the average in the G7 was 117% of their GDP in debt. By the end of 2020, I wouldn't be surprised if that average has gone up to about 150% of their annual GDP. So in terms of things like the cost of healthcare systems and caring for the old, all of those sort of liabilities that are outstanding, they're just going to become increasingly impossible to pay. And I think that one of the few solutions, and we'll discuss some few others in future videos, is going to be a global debt jubilee. Because effectively, I believe that the only workable solution to this crisis in the medium to long term is going to be a significant wealth transfer from investors to debtors themselves. So I'm going to end it there and just sort of say that I think that what's really exciting is that this virus is exposing the fragility of the existing financial system, and that we should actually all rejoice because all of a sudden anything is possible. And what seemed insanely outlandish just a few weeks or few months or few years ago is actually being seriously considered in the public conversation. So talk of debt jubilees will only continue to gain traction since effectively it equates to a quantitative easing for the 99%. So as always, like, share, subscribe, click the bell. Let me know in the comments below what you think about these debt jubilees, if you agree. Keep giving me feedback and letting me know what you want me to talk about in future. All right, till next time. Peace out.